Well, hello and welcome to the Just in Time Cafe. I'm Tracy O'Rourke, co-founder of the Just in Time Cafe. I'm going to be your moderator for today's awesome webinar. If you have never been to the cafe before, you are in for a treat because I'm very excited about today's webinar, Value Stream Mapping, Charting the Course, and Unveiling the Power with Mike Osterling, one of my all-time favorite people. Ever since I found out Mike lives in my hometown of San Diego 15 years ago, I've been stalking him ever since. And I had to arm wrestle him into this webinar. I'm just kidding. He was happy to do a webinar at the Just in Time Cafe. Right, Mike? Yes. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Mike before we get started. Mike's a facilitator, coach, speaker, consultant. He has 25 years of lean leadership experience, has driven transformations in industries including distribution, financial services, software development, construction, energy, manufacturing, and many more. Besides mountain biking, Mike's passion includes coaching individuals and teams through problem-solving cycles, helping people learn how to see opportunities using new methods, which I love too, and supporting organizations as they shift their cultures. He has worked with multiple universities in the development and delivery of lean enterprise certification programs. He's a certified trainer for implementation of lean. He has a Six Sigma black belt. And did you know that he is fluent in Spanish? We have a story there. One of the first assignments we did together in Mexico. He also has co-authored books including the Shingo Prize winning Value Stream Mapping and the Kaizen Event Planner. So welcome, Mike. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Tracy. It's so good to be here. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Elizabeth, and welcome everyone. Happy to be here.
You are not on video yet, Mike. Are you going to do the big reveal now?
Ta-da!
There you are. All right. Before we get started, just want to cover a few logistics. You can ask questions anytime by entering them into the chat area. There's also a question area, but we'll be using the chat area throughout the session. This session is generally available for free. It will be available for free on the Just in Time Cafe website. And we will post this by Monday of the following week. Okay, our first activity, which the chat is going crazy. I'm watching it as I'm talking here. Many of you are sharing where you're from, which is great. We get registrants from all over the world. We love to know where you are right now. And so, Mike, you've got a lot of fans here, man. I mean, there's just people from all over. Kent, Washington, James from Reno, Allison from, where are you from, Allison? I think Alyssa's from Kent. Allison, where are you from? Lisa, you're from Ohio. Dell from Oregon. We have Derek from Aubrey, Texas. We have Anthony from Chicago. We have Christopher from Rancho Cucamonga. We actually have Ron from Canada. And we have somebody from Mexico I saw earlier. So guess what, Mike? You are officially international in terms of this webinar. Katie from Santa Barbara. Creusa, we know Creusa. She's from San Diego. Mary Kay from Chicagoland. We've got Fabian from Tijuana, Oscar, Tovar. Hey, how's it going? And we've got all kinds of people here. There's a lot of people here just to hear you talk on the topic that we all want to learn more about, value stream mapping. And yes, I'm going to let Mike talk in just a second, because really that's why you're here. But I have a few just quick announcements. First of all, we have our next webinar. I just want to let you know about that. It's coming up next month, October 19th. It's called Causal Reasoning, Lean Special Sauce for Root Cause Analysis. And this guy, Peter Cullen, he's a crack up. You know, his description of this webinar is great. Are your fish bones a bit dry? Is your Ishikawa a bit wishy-washy? Do your 5 whys leave you yawning? So if you want to learn about causal reasoning in your life, the mind-bending, perspective-shifting technique that you'll wish you discovered years ago, you definitely want to come to this webinar. And you're going to take your root cause analysis to a new level of thoroughness and dig your way down to holistic causes and effects. Doesn't that sound impressive? I'm already
That sounds
signed up.
awesome. Yeah, that sounds fun.
I know. So join Peter Cullen. He's a continuous improvement lead and master black belt for Shell Global. And he's going to think about, gas stations and forecourts and things like that. So don't miss that. And he's going to be joining us from Scotland with over 30 years in the process improvement industry. And boy, is he funny. He's going to definitely train you. That's a new term. Okay. And last announcement, I promise, is our latest podcast is out with Krista Schulte, and it's episode 94. Krista's the Assistant Director of Operational Excellence for the University of Michigan. And Krista gave us a glimpse of hosting the Lean in Higher Education Conference before COVID, and a little bit about applying this in higher education. And if you didn't know already, that Lean Higher Education Conference, it's a globe-trotting conference. It's back in the US this year. It's going to be hosted at UC San Diego next month. And we also talk about hot apps like artificial intelligence, and the results are real and really useful. We'll tell you how to use it for problem-solving change management. So check that out when you can. And now, without further ado, the amazing, the awesome, the unbelievable bike riding guy, Mike Osterling.
Without further ado, I want more ados. Come on, where are they? Bring them on. Hey, Tracy, Elizabeth, great to be here. I love your following. I recognized I didn't get to read all of the chats or all that, but lots of names I recognize. Mr. Jim Grant and Armando and Tony Manos and others, and it's good to see y'all. And it really speaks, getting big turnouts like this speaks to the power of what you guys have been doing for years. So thanks for all your contributions to the community. So, hey, value stream mapping, charting the course and unveiling the power. This is a quickie. There's lots to value stream mapping. So let's dig into it. So what I'm hoping to accomplish today is that you guys will start getting an understanding of the power and benefits, or reinforce or add on to what you already know of value stream mapping. We'll talk about when it makes sense to use value stream mapping and some of the things that make for an effective value stream mapping activity. And I'm going to say beyond the activity transformation. And you'll learn from some of my my mistakes. That's when we learn the most, is when we make mistakes. So if that's true, I'm a pretty smart guy, because I've been doing this stuff for 20, 25 years, and I've made more than one mistake. And I think I've learned from a lot of them. So that's what we're going to try to accomplish today. But before we dig into that, you guys, we've got a poll that we want to run, because we want to kind of get a feel for where you guys are as a group in terms of experience level. So if you're, a newbie to this stuff, we want to find out if, a value what? Maybe you're aware, you've done a little reading, or level 3 would be you're pretty comfortable at value streams and you can read them. 4 would be experience, and 5 would be really experienced.
Mm-hmm. Good. What is your guess? If you had to guess, Mike, for people, if they were going to guess 1 to 3, 1 to 5, what do you think would be the majority, without looking at what the poll is happening yet?
And I'm not looking at the results. It's a knowledgeable group that you guys have here. So I'm going to say that our average, if we put a score, is going to be just underneath a 4. That's my guess.
Ooh.
What do you think?
All right. Well, we are at 82% participation right now. So we have a few more seconds before I share the results, but I'd say that's a pretty good guess. I would have guessed the same. Okay, are we ready? Let's go ahead and end the poll and see results.
All right. So where are we at? Look at that. It's maybe even a little higher, but interesting. So there's a few of you who don't have much experience or exposure to this, got 3% of the value what. And so if we add that together with aware, so we got 30% who haven't been around the block before. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just about 20% of you feel like you're pretty knowledgeable with this stuff. And then we get, look at that, 31 plus 22, quick math, 53%, more than half of you are experienced or very experienced. I think it's really cool. What do we got? 22% or 14 out of the 64 would say they've facilitated or been on several value stream mapping teams. So
yeah,
cool.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I would also, so, say, Mike, that it's a tribute to you, because they want to learn from the best now. And I know you're very humble about being the best, but
I'm I'm
I'd say you're the
I'm
best.
I'm running away. So, um, so so that being said, and recognizing there's a spectrum here, I know we've only got, just less than an hour, but as we go through this, if people have questions, drop them in the chat. Okay. Elizabeth and Tracy are helping me monitor the chat. And if it's related and timely, I've invited them to just interrupt me and ask the question in the moment. We might have a few minutes, depending on how much conversation we have. We might have a few minutes at the end for questions. So probably better to do them in the real time. So, all right. So, kind of back up and principles of lean thinking. Book came out 30 years. No, it couldn't have been 30 years ago. It was just about 30 years ago. Lean Thinking came out by Womack and Jones. And 5 principles that they kind of highlight that I pulled out of this was, hey, we want to define value. We want to recognize, or yeah, we'll say recognize, understand, and manage and improve our value streams. We want to create flow. Principle 4 was establish pull, so we're flowing, or if we can't flow, we're working at the rate of the pull of the customer. And number 5 is seek perfection. And it's pretty interesting in a lot of organizations. What we see is, hey, we're really good, and we talk companies that are doing this lean stuff, we're really good. We're talking about value add and non-value add. We might see people really focusing on reducing lead time and putting in place flow, or getting closer and closer to flow in manufacturing companies or in healthcare environments. We're seeing how people, they're getting people through different phases of the process a lot quicker. We'll go in and we'll see Kanbans, whether it's out in the shop floor or in the software development area. People are using scrums and Kanbans and things like that. So we got pull systems, and everybody's talking about continuous improvement. We got continuous improvement departments and personnel, and I think there's a whole bunch of us on this call. But when you look at it, there's way too many organizations, my observations, way too many organizations that aren't seriously trying to understand and improve the value streams. So we're doing this other stuff, but maybe we're more or less más o menos mids, kind of mids, meh, on the value stream improvement front. So this is important stuff. Um, so this is important instruction here. Chat bar, okay? Don't hit enter until I say okay. Okay, so type in the answer to this question. What do you think the primary purpose of value stream mapping is? And if you don't know, that's okay to say I don't know. But don't hit enter. We don't want people influencing other folks. I know there's going to be a whole
Not yet,
bunch that come
anyway.
across at once. I'm going to give you about 8 more seconds.
8 more seconds. Oh, whoops. Somebody hit enter by accident. That's okay.
That happens. Okay. So 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and enter. Now you need to give us a minute to read 60 or 70 some responses here. Okay. So I'm assimilating and
to know where the value is created versus non-value added activities.
Yep.
Good one.
End-to-end flow, eliminate waste. High level people sell themselves on the need for change. Hey, good one, Christopher. I think you've learned about this stuff before. Good to see you there. Show the work that's done by different groups. Look for opportunities. I'm not going to read them all. Increase value. Identify waste. Process improvement. Resolve and see disconnect. Visualize important steps. VA versus NVA. Again, I'm scanning. Mapping customer demand, opportunities, see the process, maximize value while eliminating waste. Good stuff here, guys. Expose problems, end-to-end analysis to understand value and non-value adding processes. So what we've got, what I'm hearing from you guys, I'm going to put 2 big buckets around these. Okay. We've got a bucket of kind of tactical stuff, important, but tactical. So what's the value add, non-value add? How do we eliminate waste? Where's the flow? And then there's some stuff that I'm going to say is more on organizational and strategic. And there were several in here that talked about getting leaders to understand what's going on and conversation And some of these are kind of bridge the gap between those. I mean, there were some about where the problems are. I talk about pain points. Where's the pain in the process? Where's the pain in the process? What I think is really important to recognize is that, yes, we're trying to figure out this tactical stuff and where's the value add, non-value add? How do we eliminate stuff? And what's the process flow? I think the bigger and more important thing is to get organizational alignment in terms of what's working, what ain't working, and I shouldn't say organizational, I should say leaders. Get leaders aligned between themselves in terms of where ain't this thing working, okay? And what could this thing look like? And how the heck are we going to get there? And so the key here, in my opinion, is getting the leaders to recognize that. Way too often, people in the front lines recognize the disconnects. And the leaders, Tracy, you introduced me to this thing a couple of years ago. 4 different types of processes out there, okay? 4 different views of processes. What I think it is, what it really is, what it's supposed to be, and what it could be. And I hope I did that justice. But that was I love that when you shared that with me the first time. And I think one of the challenges is the further away we are from the work, our perception of what it is so, I don't know what's the right word, sanitized, distilled, simple, unreal. And when we're talking about value streams, which by definition go across silos of the organization, there's very infrequently alignment in terms of what's really going on. So good feedback, guys. You guys covered it all. So value stream mapping, what's a value stream? So value stream is defined as all the activities that are required, value add and non-value add, to transform I want one of these things until I've got it. Okay. Classic value streams are external facing. So they're external customer facing. External customer says, I want one of these. It's not the customer experience. It's really the organization's experience. What do they have to do to fulfill the customer requirement? Hey, the customer experience is I asked for one, and then 3 weeks later, or whatever it is, I got one. So what's happening during those 3 weeks, or whatever that I'm going to call it the lead time is? So request to delivery, and really, it's not just segments of those. It's not silo at a time. It's really saying, we typically wouldn't say do a value stream map within a silo. The real benefit and the real intent and purpose behind this is, what's that closed loop? I want one until I got it. Tell you a story. So I live in San Diego. Like Tracy said, I've been involved with a number of universities. I got exposed to a command in San Diego at 32nd Street Naval Station. The command is called SWARMAC, and that was original contact was through a program we were running at San Diego State. And they sent a bunch of people through the program over the years, a lot of leaders. And one of the things they did a number of years ago as a leadership team is they stepped back and said, well, actually, so SWARMAC, the command, Southwest Regional Maintenance Center, here's my layman's term, my layman's description of what they do there. Basically, any naval ship that comes into port in San Diego has to get work done. It might be minor work, it might be repairs, it might be overhauls, whatever. And all of that work is brokered and or executed through this group called SWARMAC, Southwest Regional Maintenance Center. So this could be anything from, replacing an antenna to replacing doors or overhauling an engine or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and there's dozens of shops on the base there where they execute the work. So the Navy's goal, their mission, we talk about the book, The Goal, and the goal is about in that book, the goal is to make money. That's not the Navy's goal. The Navy's goal is to be in harm's way. And it's really hard for a bunch of ships to be in harm's way if they're in port. So being in harm's way is out on the water, being deployed. So when they come into port, in some cases, the key thing is how long until they're ready to get back out there. And so what they did was they looked at their critical shops and said, which of these shops have the longest turnaround time? that's keeping the ships from being redeployed. So they went through all of these and they identified the critical shops. And this wasn't the most critical, but it was one of the longer, I'll say, turnaround time shops. Back then, I think they called it the paint shop, but a heck of a lot more happened in this paint shop than just painting. And one of the things that they said, okay, this shop has one of the longest turnaround times. And so then they went into that shop and they said, okay, what is something that represents a long turnaround time? And they have these things that go on the side of the ship called an accommodation ladder. And the accommodation ladder, basically, there's a really simple version of the value stream map that says, hey, and there's, again, this is a very simple version. There's actually an initial request that comes in 30 days ahead of time or something like that. But basically, they got to take the ladder off, and this is for repair, maintenance, whatever it might be. They've got to take the ladder off the ship, and that's done by the dockside personnel. There's a quality group that does an assessment and says, here's the condition of the ladder, here's the needs, this is the work that needs to be done. And then there's an engineering and planning group that actually puts together a work plan. Says, this is what needs to be done. This is how you want it. This is how the work needs to be executed. Then the actual repair takes place, and then they get it back out to the dock. They mount it, they test it, they get the ship to sign off on it. So we want to improve, but if we want to improve, we need to know where we're starting at, and it needs to be measurable. So classic value stream mapping metrics: lead time, process time. Lead time is how long does it take to get through each of these processes, and the process time is how much work, so the work content within the lead time. So they did a classic value stream map, and lo and behold, we had some, holy cow, at the end of the day, it was something like 66 days it could be up to 66 days to transform this. I need a ladder that's ready to go until they've got it. And then they said, so where are those big buckets of time? One of them was in the repair shop. It was taking something like 30 days to turn a ladder around in the repair shop. They actually did a Kaizen event in there. I was not part of that. They did a Kaizen event in there. They figured out how to get that down to 5 days, which was really cool. They, based on the value stream plan, they asked me to give them a hand. It was actually, again, a Kaizen event, but working with the engineering and planning group and figuring out how do we take 27 down to whatever. So actually, they had put together a vision of what they wanted it to be. And the vision was, yeah, they were shooting for a week in the repair shop. They were shooting for a week through the creating the work plan, the CWP. So this is not about Kaizen events, but dang, these guys focused on this. I helped them. They were actually able to, the goal was 5 days that was set by the command, by the leadership team. And these guys as a team got this down to 2 days, which was really, really cool. But this is where this is not about Kaizen events. This is about value stream mapping. They're saying this is where we were, this is where we want to go. So as a leadership team, what they were doing within the value stream mapping activity was defining what is it, or I'm sorry, where/what process, or where in the process in the value stream do we need to focus? Hey, this is 80-20 stuff. This is Pareto. Hey, what do we have here? 27 plus 30, 57 days out of the 66 was in those two processes. So if we really, spend a bunch of time and effort trying to figure out how to speed up the assessment or taking the ladder off, we wouldn't have leveraged it. It may look extreme, 5 hours out of 4 days, 5 hours of work out of 4 days of lead time. Oh my God, that's hardly anything. But in reality, 4 days is hardly anything out of 66. So what it does is it really helps focus. And by coming up with this plan, and they had a transformation plan, it actually gets the leaders aligned in terms of what is it we should be looking at? What is it that we should be working on? And then within the Kaizen events, they were figuring out the how. Value stream mapping, the what. Kaizen events, the how. So I'm going to ask how your organization does value stream mapping. So we're going to launch another poll here. And kind of the answers are, I don't know, or they don't. Typically delegated to a couple folks, 1 or 2 people. Another option might be with a team, primarily frontline supervisors, maybe some managers, or option 4 is with high-level leaders. All right, poll is launched.
All right, so again, I'm gonna quiz you, Mike, and while we're waiting for people to participate, which one do you
Yeah.
think is gonna be the biggest?
It's not going to be as strong. Which one do I think will be the biggest?
One,
I'm
two, three, or
scared.
four.
I'm going to go with two and go home depressed. Actually, it might be one. This will be very interesting. This is the first time I've run this poll. So with a big broad audience like this. So let's give you 5 more seconds and we'll close the poll. 4, 3, 2, 1, and our survey says, oh, thank God, I feel so much better. Okay. Well, I feel marginally better. Okay. So 30% of them don't. Uh, 20%. So half of the group they don't, or it's delegated to folks. 34%, it's mostly frontline supervisors, maybe some managers, and less than 20% is with senior leaders. So this is half full, half empty type thing. There's all kinds of opportunity out there. That's great to know that 20% of the organizations are doing it with what I think are the critical folk. Okay. Um, so there's opportunity out there. And we're going to talk now and get into through the rest of this, why it's so important that senior leaders are part of this.
Hey, Mike, we did have a quick question that
Oh,
was put in earlier that I missed, but it's from Ron. He was wondering on the value stream, do you try to keep the same time measurements on the sawtooth, days, hours, minutes, etc.? Any thoughts or initial comments on that? Or is that
not
something
on
we'll
the
cover later?
Typically, I'm not going to cover that. It's a good question. Happy to answer that. Thanks, Ron. Um, I What I like to do on the sawtooth is put units of measure that are intuitively understandable. So if we had on that sawtooth that we were looking at, if we had converted and go back there just to, you know, 30 days to hours, it's like, oh, I don't know what 2,400 hours are. And if we have that, so I look at that, it's 30 days and it's 65 hours. Like, okay, 65 hours of work, that's a big number. I might say 5 days there, but I like to go with what's easily understood by the folks who may be reading this map later on. Now, there are some calculations that lots of times we do that we'll need to convert it to common units of measure. Like if we want to know what the activity ratio is, which is typically process time divided by lead time, we might have to put it all in hours or days, whatever the common unit of measure is. And while we're talking about that, typically when we're talking days, that's basically when we convert it. If it's a single shift operation, we're going to say it's 8 hours or 10 hours or however long a shift is. Thanks, Tracy.
Sure.
And so what we're trying to do, you guys, with value stream mapping is getting overall system optimization. Okay. We're trying to get everybody, different functions or even within functions, everybody going the same direction at the same pace. If we don't do that, we have the risk of having to do course correction. Okay. Which is whatever label we want to put on it, rework, extra effort, whatever it might be. But if we're not aligned in terms of what it is that we're trying to accomplish, hey, I've got the sales group that's going one way, I've got marketing that's going another way, and I've got operations that has their own interpretation of what it is that we should be trying to achieve. So I did a value stream mapping activity. It was probably a year and a half ago, and it was actually on sales campaigns with an organization. And so one of the things that really came up in there, and we had sales and we had, I forget if operations was on the team, but it was primarily sales and marketing, and there were some IT information system type support folks in there. And it was really interesting because sales and marketing, they weren't aligned on what their customer slash sales slash approach philosophy should be. So one of the things that came up in that, one of the to-dos coming out of that was get sales and marketing aligned on a common sales strategy. One of the other groups was product management. So are we aligned in terms of what products we're bringing to market? and how we're bringing it to market and what segments we're going after. Sales is going after one market segment, and then the marketing group doesn't even know about that segment of the market. So how do we make sure that we're all going in the same direction, same speed, and we're aligned? So we talk about value stream mapping. I kind of shared this already, but hey, we're talking about high level view. Some people will say it's a 30,000 view of what's going on, 30,000 foot view of what's going on. And what we're trying to do is at that level, we can actually identify some of those big disconnects. Hey, do we even have a common sales philosophy in approaching our customers, for example? That stuff surfaces as we look at the value stream at a process level. So sometimes we might need to get a little deeper detail, but what we're trying to map is not the whole thing. I've seen value stream maps that are twice the length of my the 35 feet long. And that, boy, I love maps and stuff. And I walk in, I see that, my eyes glaze over. Think what a senior leader how they would react to that. They're just like, I'm not looking at this. I'm not helping you develop this. That's not what we're trying to do, you guys. What we're trying to do is identify those pain points, identify the disconnects, and try to put some metrics around them if it makes sense. So it's high level. This is process performance and gaps, the gaps. What are the pain points? And within doing this, what I'm going to say, there's 3 key deliverables. One is getting alignment in terms of what the current state is. So the current state map and performance within the current state, collaborating within those leaders and figuring out what could this thing look like. And one of the things we want to figure out ahead of time is what timeline are we talking about? Are we talking about 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? I like to keep them short term. I like to keep the focus. Hey, what can we do in the next 9 to 12 months? Some folks really say, where do we want to be in 5 years? Hey, as a vision for an organization, I'm all in for that. But in terms of how we execute and realize that vision, if we put a 5-year plan in there, there's no sense of urgency on working on that. In fact, what's relevant, boy, how dynamic of a world do we live in? Is it even responsible? Does it even make sense to guess at what we want this thing to look like in 5 years with the changing customers, technology, competitive factors, internal capabilities? So 9 to 12 months, maybe 6, create that stimulus and some motivation and some energy in terms of what should we start working on now. So we're collaborating and figuring out a current state and then getting consensus on a transformation plan. We could have a 5 or 10 minute conversation around, what is consensus? Over the years, what I've kind of my takeaway or my sales pitch on consensus is, hey, you got 10 people in the room. You got 20 things that you think we should be working on in the next 9, 12 months. And you're never going to get all 10 people agreeing on all 20 of those things. And so I like to describe consensus as agreement within that team that they're going to support moving forward in that direction. So maybe 8 of the people or 9 of the people say, yeah, this is the right thing. And somebody's there kind of sitting on the fence. And it's like, we're asking for commitment to say, we will all be behind this. Don't walk out of this room and say, those guys are freaking stupid. They're crazy. They're I don't know what they were doing last weekend. Okay. We want them to say, okay, hey, and it's okay if they say, I'm not sure I'm 100% in agreement with what we're doing, but we're going to try this. We're going to give it we're going to back these guys. And that's messaging with their group that we're going to move forward in this direction. They're all experiments, you guys. They're all hypotheses. They're all experiments. And so let's run the experiment. Let's give them a fighting chance. And then I think one of the other attributes of good value stream management and value stream improvement is recognizing that what we say the process should look like in a year, well, a year from now, if we got 70, 80, 90% of that stuff done, we should be going back and evaluating, okay, here we are, what's next? Especially for those customer facing or core value streams. We should be now, pragmatically, does it happen? Do we have the capacity to do it? Not always. Okay. Not always on an annual basis, but boy, there should be a periodic checkup in terms of not just performance, but What's next? What's the new pain? There's always unintended consequences. So in the chat bar, given the nature of value stream mapping, oh God, I already gave the answer to this one. We're not chat barring this one. We looked at the survey poll. You guys, for value stream mapping to really be effective, we've got to have people with the accountability, authority, and sometimes influence in terms of being, in terms of, I'll say, it might be individual contributors that are in very influential or knowledgeable roles that should be on the value stream mapping team. Sometimes a classic one for that one is, hey, somebody from the IT group has a good understanding of how all of the different systems work. It might not be your CIO, but it's somebody who understands, has a good holistic understanding of the systems. Now, here's one of the big challenges with value stream mapping. We want it to be senior leaders. I already acknowledge they have a superficial understanding of what's going on. And so how do they get a real appreciation for the challenges, issues, and pain points within the value stream? And so that's where value stream mapping, if it's a product type environment, a physical type environment, that's where we shift away from hanging out in a conference room to going out and walking the Gemba, talking to the people, seeing what's going on. Okay. It doesn't mean that we're doing time studies, but we're going out, we're visiting the workplace, we're talking to the folks, and we're learning what the pain is and what the disconnects are. So distribution company, hey, let's get people from the customer service or sales or the product management group out in the floor and hear what challenges the people are having that are trying to fill orders. So we walk the value stream. Now, if you're in a knowledge work or transactional environment that doesn't have physical stuff, people, product, things like that, then we can do a virtual value stream walk and bring folks into the room from the different appropriate functions, frontline workers that are having to deal with customers, services, whatever it might be, and get those folks in the room and share with us, maybe via screen sharing or projecting their screen and or conversations about what challenges they're having. So getting out there, going together. If we do this right, you guys, I already talked about direction and vision, where we're going to go, and buy-in on how to get there. But really what happens, you guys, is it's cool because it sets focus, it gets momentum, and it really speeds up the pace of improvement of the organization. And it gets, and we visualize it, and there's clarity, or at least less obscurity. But there's more clarity among the folks. Why are we working on this thing? Well, we're working on this because this is what we're trying to accomplish. So it's not process mapping. It's not swim lanes, although I've done some value stream maps with swim lanes, but they've always got, never say always, Mike. They almost always have metrics. Okay. And those key metrics, process time and lead time, we've already talked about that. But here's one that we are going to ask you, because I haven't tipped my hand on this one already. We are in, almost everybody's in an information intense environment. And so given how critical information is in order to fulfill customer requirements, what are different ways that you guys are measuring quality of information? So how can the quality of information be measured? Tony Manos, love it, buddy. The R&R studies, MSAs.
What does quality mean? Define what quality means.
So what? Thank you. So what? In the context of this, what I'm talking about in terms of quality is quality of information. So, we're doing a request for quote, and so different parties may touch a request for quote. I'll go into an engineered product. Hey, the engineering group might touch it. There might be an estimating group. There might be a cost accounting or a costing group. And so we say, hey, engineering group, or actually we'll just pretend it goes in that sequence. Okay. Engineering, what did I say? costing, and actually we'll say it's engineering, materials, and costing. We'll keep it simple like that. So engineering group does their bit to respond to the request for quote, which is specs, and they call out, we need this type of material or whatever. So the materials group can get pricing on specials. So we'd ask the materials group, hey, what percent of the time do you get all of the information? Actually, quality is, did I get all the information that I needed to do my materials sourcing stuff? So, um, so several of here's so good. So some of these are really cool tools, which may be very situational, like gauge R&Rs and MSAs and things like that. Good stuff. What we typically see in a value stream mapping type level or macro look at a process is application of a tool called percent complete and accurate. It's a really powerful tool. So percent complete and accurate is asking, hey, it's asking the materials person, what percent of the time when you got that package from sales and from engineering, what percent of the time did you get all of the information that you needed that should have been there? I should say that. All the information that should have been there. The information that you received was correct, accurate, and or it didn't need additional clarification of information that should have been clear to begin with. So basically, it's a rework number because I've either got a callback or actually it's I might be making up stuff. I might be guessing, which we've seen that and we know what happens or we know what the risk is on occasion if we're guessing. So percent complete and accurate, most organizations, we don't have hard data on that. The information does not exist in the system. So then it's like, ooh, how do I get information that doesn't exist in the system? And here's a risk. Some folks are like, oh, we gotta, okay, let's collect information for a month or 2 months or something like that, so we get a really precise number. And what we've learned is from a value stream mapping perspective, if we ask people to, spitball it more or less, what is it? One person might say it's 60%, another person might say it's 40% right first time or percent complete and accurate. And if we get into a silly debate about is it 40% or 60%, we're missing the big opportunity. It's messed up. It's missed a lot. So that's a big one. We're debating between 98 and 97%. Maybe that's not something that's coming to the surface in terms of a big problem. But hey, half of the time it's missing. That's probably, we've got issues. That's probably something we should be exploring in designing the future state. All right, any other questions or comments or highlights from the chat, Elizabeth or Tracy?
Yes, there is one. We call percent complete and accurate. How often do you correct, return, add, or clarify? Yes,
Love
how
it.
often?
Yep, how often? As a percentage. So I get 10 quotes. What percentage of typical quotes? What percentage of the time do I need to do it? I like that. Okay, so percent complete and accurate. One of the things I think that's important is to recognize that you can have low percent complete and complete and accurate outputs from any process, even the external customer. Okay, sorry, the customer's not always right. Okay, but let's be respectful. I've actually had some situations where we've approached the customers and talked about this, and they're like, yeah, there's some things we're not doing right. You're right. But here's some things that you guys aren't, you're not giving us all the information that we need in terms of what is it that you need. You're not asking for everything. That could be a lot more clear. So there's non-manufacturing value streams out there. Okay. This is not just a production type thing. There's all kinds of value streams. I've talked about customer facing ones, a request for quote. It might be shipment of a product, might be a repair service request or something like that, or warranty fulfillment. There's internal value streams that don't face customers. And it's a whole beginning to end. That's not part of the regular customer fulfillment. So an IT incident resolution. I can't get my job done. We've got a significant IT issue. What are all of the steps that are required in order to transform the I want to be able to work in the system until we're actually back up and running. And actually, some folks would say it's not just until the user's back up and running, it's actually until root cause analysis has been done and we've put in place a fix and verified that validated that it works. So IT incidents, facilities equipment, like a purchase requisition, not for regular goods, but for one-off type stuff, or onboarding of new employees. So I'm putting you guys to work again in the chat bar. What are some other examples of non-manufacturing value streams, whether they're customer facing or internal support value streams? So
Good.
take a
And while
minute
they're
to
thinking
scratch
of
your head
that,
and think, yeah, go ahead.
Mike, while they're thinking of that, we do have another question from Katie. What would the value stream start and end points be for an environmental program? There's no clear request either than a clean and sustainable environment. For the lakes program, for example, would the value stream be from when a water quality impairment is identified or when it is removed? Question. It's also in the chat if you want to reread that.
I actually, so I think it would probably, sounds like a classic example of when a need or an issue or something like that is identified. Oh, we've got a problem. Until that problem, kind of like the IT incident resolution. What are all the steps and parties that are involved, processes that are involved, until not in that one, I'm going to pretend I know what I'm talking about, acknowledging that I don't. But until that thing is resolved or mitigated, and perhaps even including, if appropriate, root cause analysis and implementation of countermeasures to prevent that from happening again. That makes sense? Anything you want to add to that, Tracy? You've been around this block a whole bunch of times.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to think about. Yeah. So I tend to think about it as a trigger, like maybe it's a trigger that happens. Maybe it's not a request, but it's an action that happens or something that happens that triggers the value stream. Like an incident happens or,
yeah. Yep.
An action happens of some kind. So I think that could be helpful. I think what was interesting though, back to your Swarmic example, I was actually talking to the executive director, John Robinson, and we were discussing what is the thing that is flowing through the value stream.
Yeah, and the thing often morphs.
Yeah.
It might start out as we'll do a classic request for quote to cash, which was something that somebody had in the types of value streams. So quote to cash, it starts out as a quote, and then it's a response to the quote, and then that would actually, hopefully, knock on wood, that morphs into a purchase order from the customer. Then it might turn into a sales order internally. Then depending what you're doing, it might turn into a work order if you're doing a physical product. Then the work order might actually turn into the widget. And then it turns into a shipper, and it might actually split because we've got some information flow going back to, hey, we need to invoice these people. So now it turns into an invoice and a receipt. And the other thing is it continues in that other branch is a widget that goes into the customer's hands and they put into service.
Yeah. Good.
So I love this. There's some really good ones here. Make sure you save this chat. I like these. So new product, I can't read them all, but there's just hit some offboarding employees. I heard another one that was onboarding employees. We did a really cool one that was called the hire to retire value stream. And that's one where you got to say, okay, that might not be about lead time because we want the lead time to be really, really long for a hire to retire. Okay. And what their specific interest in this value stream was, and this is a great example of how value streams can be adaptable as a tool, it can be adaptable. Their interest in that one was trying to identify all the systems that touch an employee. Not that necessarily an employee touches, because there's a lot of things that run in the background. But all the systems, I mean, it's like everything from job descriptions to the recruiting process, to onboarding, training, so learning management systems. What do we got? Our 401ks, our benefits, our cafeteria benefit systems. Oh, in the IT group, how they manage the access for each one of us to different applications. And there's so many places where these are standalone systems and there's information about us as individuals. And one of the mantras with this group was, where's the single source of truth? Okay. Sometimes when people get married, they make the decision to change their last name. How long does it take for all of the different systems to reflect their new address or new last name or something? There was a woman who was sharing with me. She goes, I think they finally got it. It took 2 years, but I can't believe how many times I've had to point out to them that they didn't get my last name updated. So very adaptable tool. So offboarding could be getting part of onboarding. Scroll through the chats, you guys. There's some really interesting ones in here. New product introduction. I think I said that one. Getting a passport. Oh, good Lord. Product obsolescence. I like that one. Dun dun dun. Any other ones here, Tracy, that kind of jumped off the page for you? Oh, onboarding new clients, new customers, or new suppliers. That's another one I've seen.
Yeah. Engineering, talent acquisition. I mean, 80% of what I work on is non-manufacturing. So,
Right.
the request for change, contract process. I think what's interesting is the one I see all the time so much, like you have it listed, onboarding new employees or onboarding
Yeah.
an employee into the department. Just painful everywhere you go.
I love Scott's becoming proficient in value stream mapping. Right. Try to reduce the lead time on that, you guys. Okay. So, I think what's interesting if we talk about customer facing versus internal value streams, quite often there's many, many, many more internal value streams as opposed to the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 external value streams. So what's getting in the way of us delivering value to our customers? That's where the power of understanding where our internal value streams are and what our biggest issues are.
Okay,
So
you got
kind
about
of
10 minutes, Mike.
I just
10
I just
minutes.
I just saw that. So hey, there's a process to get in there. We want to plan and prepare. We want to do sequestered juries X number of days in a row, typically 3 days. This is all non-value add stuff. This is the lean guy here saying what I do is 100% non-value add. External customer ain't paying us to do value stream mapping. But if we do a good job of it and we execute the transformation plan, I'm going to put it under that umbrella of necessary non-value add. So, but we've got a
I know we're
plan.
running out of time, but Katie has a really good question. Could any process also be seen as a value stream? How do you distinguish between the two? I would also consider onboarding a process.
So onboarding itself is probably a process that's comprised of a bunch of steps. Okay. And the onboarding is a process within the new employee hire or the hire to retire value stream. So there's a little bit of an art to saying, should we be looking at this from a value stream perspective or from a process level perspective? Again, if we're trying to improve the onboarding process, we all know it's a process. And so who's involved? And maybe we just sit down and we process map that baby and get the front lines together and say, how do we improve this? Value stream mapping would say we look at the hire to retire. Oh boy, onboarding is a total mess. And given all the other processes in the new hire process, in the new hire value stream, this is one where we need to focus on. Leadership would say this is a priority. So I hope that helps explain or differentiate. It's a bit of an art though. Hey, put together a charter, kind of tells us why we're doing it, what our goals and objectives are, who should be on the team. And it's not always pretty, you guys. That's okay. I prefer this method. Post-it notes on butcher paper up on the wall. COVID kind of forced us into, not forced, but I've always done it that way. COVID kind of said, hey, is there another way to do this? And in some cases, it makes sense to use virtual whiteboards. I've actually played around where we do the virtual whiteboards in person with people in the room. There's pros and cons to doing that. But we find all kinds of issues. We aren't aligned. We're doing different things. We got all kinds of percent complete and accurate issues. We're not fully utilizing the systems. We've got staffing issues with skills and such. We've got too much variation and redundancy and lots of just classic 8 waste. And here's the biggie. One of the things we learn is nobody's responsible for the overall value stream performance. So we do these, we get great ideas. We do these, we say, hey, which should we go after? Simple prioritization charts. Hey, impact is high, easy in terms of effort. And so people talk about the low hanging fruit. Hey, high impact, easy to do. That's low hanging fruit. And then as a team, we figure out how deep into this chart we want to go in terms of what it is that we want to focus on over the X number of months. And then when we get that alignment, there's our plan. What is it that we're doing? Why are we trying to do it? I love this end in mind here. Um, what's our time frame in terms of starting and finishing? What's our status? So the what, who, and the when, and how are we doing? So value stream mapping. Again, I think I already said this. It really is as much of an art as a science. It's a very adaptable tool. I mean, we've used it just to get clarity on what's happening, who's doing what. We've used it for green space for environmental things. Where's our carbon footprint? So it's really cool, adaptable, fun tool.
So guess what? We are almost out of time, but we had to tell you that I know many of you want more value stream mapping and more Mike Osterling. So guess what? We are delivering. We have a new workshop model that we're experimenting with, and Mike Osterling and the JIT Cafe are collaborating on our first workshop, and it's going to be running next month, and it's going to be offered. It's all about unleashing the power with Mike Osterling and value stream mapping. And there's going to be a limit of 25 people, and there is going to be a wait list. We're going to offer tiered pricing for those of you that either are not working, or that your company will pay for it, or if you're a consultant and need a little help because you're paying for it yourself. We are going to provide that, but it's going to run October 24th. It's going to be from 9 to 12:30. Put it on your calendar, register, because it's a very limited, and you get 3 hours with Mike Osterling. I mean, I know he doesn't want to spend any more time with me. He'd much rather spend more time with all of you. So there's the link to register, and you want to get going. And Mike, why don't you tell them a little bit more about what they're going to learn? Because I think those 4s and 5s, those people that really want a deeper understanding of value stream mapping, are going to really be successful here. And you know what else? Why don't we ask them, what do they want to learn? Let's just see what they have to say. So while you're explaining it, if there's something you really want to learn about value stream mapping, put it in the chat window. Maybe Mike will adjust the agenda a little bit.
Good call, Tracy. And it's all about our customers, right? So what we're going to be talking, hey, today what we talked about was, we kind of had unveil was part of the title. So it's kind of open up our eyes to what the potential is. And what we're doing here is going to figure out how to unleash, and actually, what are some ways that we can, more of how to. Okay, so it's how to scope something. It's how to get buy-in before we even start mapping. It's how to make sure we get the right folks on the team, and it's within the value stream mapping activity. It's what are some tips and hints and methods for getting a better understanding about what's actually happening and where the pain is and what the problems are, and get collaboration and getting buy-in and what that future state design looks like. So lots of tips, tricks, methods, and war stories.
Yes. So if you have questions, let us know. If you have any additional questions for Mike, we've got about 2 minutes left. Katie wants to know if the government rate could be the same as the student rate. I don't think we've decided on that yet. We can always get back to you on that, or maybe make an adjustment in the price tiered pricing model. Don't want to put Mike on the spot right now. All right. Other additional questions that you have for Mike? I have one, Mike. What was your favorite value stream? Do you have a favorite value stream that you've mapped? And if so, why?
I think one of the most intriguing value stream maps I did was actually with a livestock company, privately owned. And one of the things that this just blew me away, this was in a town called Broken Bow, Nebraska. And so you think about a bunch of cowboys in Western Nebraska. These guys may have had more PhDs per employee than any company organization I've worked with. But what they wanted to do was get clarity, because one of the things they did was they would buy futures on grain price so they could feed the livestock. They would buy futures on selling price of livestock. And it was just such a cool, eye-opening experience, because number one, I didn't think cowboys cared about futures, and they knew 10x about the markets and commodities and stuff than I did. And it was one of those, I always learned something in these, and that was a really fun, neat, innovative group.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mike. Thanks for everyone to join. Great group. We had a great turnout. Katie, I will get back to you on the government rate. I'll just talk with Mike and we'll make some adjustments if we need to. Thank you, everybody. We hope to see you at the workshop next month. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. And thanks everybody for being here. I hope you got some nuggets out of this. And Tracy and Elizabeth, thanks for reaching out to me. I love doing this stuff with you guys.
Yay, Mike. We love you.
Bye, everyone.